We will get started. Definitely want to thank everyone who's joined and are in the process of joining. We are here to talk about IoT and education today. So I have some fantastic guests, of course, my colleague Matt Conger, and then our guest today is Brian Johnson, who is Director of Sales and Business Development at Brightlight. So I'm very excited to have both of you on here, and maybe just to get us started, can you kick off by just giving us that 1 minute overview of what your company does? So I guess, Brian, you're our guest. Why don't you go ahead and go first?
Yeah, so Brightlight is a company that focuses 100% in connected buildings and connected building solutions. We utilize PoE as our platform, but we also build out the ecosystem for the owners as well.
Great.
Cool. And yeah, so I'm Matt Conger. I'm with Igor. We're an Iowa-based company that we're a software tech company, and we enable high-performance educational environments by leveraging Power over Ethernet to deploy edge intelligent devices, which we'll hear about a little bit more as we talk in a little bit.
Thank you. So let's kick off first by just doing a sort of definition here. How do you define a smart school? And what role does IoT technology play in smart schools?
Okay, well, smart school to me is a building that's going to be built digitally first off, so it can grow with the needs of their occupants for not just for today, but for the future. That smart school would also have connected devices that are talking to each other and adding value and benefits to not only the students, but also the people that are running the operations within the school district themselves.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so the other things I like to think about when I'm trying to define what is a smart school is, so what does smart mean? So smart means you have a high degree of ability, right? So you're capable of, or you can achieve more, or maybe you're ready to take on those challenges. And so when I think of a smart school or a smart building, it's how can we deliver better experiences, make students perform better, make folks more productive and fulfilled or happy. And all that is done through a building that has the capabilities or the infrastructure to deliver that.
Great. And just for everyone listening, you can ask your own questions as well. Please put them in the Q&A function. You should see that in the Zoom bar at the bottom. So put your questions there. If you see a question you like and you want to give it that upvote so we make sure we prioritize it, we will do that. Otherwise, I have a ton of questions for our panelists, so we are just going to blaze through them. What do you think, and I think, again, maybe Brian could kick this one off too, but what do you think the driving factors are that are pushing schools to become smarter? You know, what's impacting their decisions to go into the idea of improving on technology in their spaces, or, you know, really the technology for the whole building?
Yeah, so my experience has been the reason why they're adapting and adopting this technology. Schools tend to hold a building for quite some time, 30, 40 years. So they're building buildings for today that are for today's needs and not for future needs. So with them being able to understand that you can have a building today that's going to meet your needs and also be able to adjust through technology with your technology needs as your demands change and so forth with very little cost is a really big story for them to hear, and they're taking it on, they're embracing it.
Yeah, and you know, when I think about how the learning environment changes on a daily basis, or the way in which we learn is evolving. Look at how COVID has impacted our lives and how we went from home learning to back to in-class learning to hybrid learning environments. And so you've got to have the technology that can, as well as, you know, the furnishings and physical objects in the space to make those spaces flexible to adapt to those environments and to create new experiences. And there's really no better way to do that today than there is with the digital architecture. It's the same way I think about our phones. Our phones used to be just a way to talk, for Brian and I to talk to each other, right? So, but now, like, I send Brian maybe emojis through Facebook or something. So it's my stereo, it's my television, it's my social media tool, and it's the same thing. Our buildings are starting to do that as well, just on a much bigger scale than what's in, the size of your phone.
Mhm.
I know, we've definitely worked on some projects together, or are in the process, I should say, Brian. Would love to know, Mimi, from either the projects we've had or some more recent ones you've had. Can you give some examples of IoT technology in action at projects you've worked on?
Yeah, sure. So one of the ones that we're working on now, the school is looking at using the sensors that have been deployed as a means for automated attendance within the classrooms. But then also taking that technology that's in the sensors already to create behaviors for the building based on alarm events, messaging, putting wearables on to visitors that can now track that visitor to make sure they're going to the proper areas. And if they're going into areas that they're not allowed, then that can be notified to the school itself. So yeah, there's what they can do at that point in time is just, I mean, if they can imagine it, it can probably happen.
Yeah,
And
like,
make sure, Matt, can you share a little bit about also how Igor can help make these things happen too? But
Yeah.
yeah, share your answer, and then
yeah, sure.
why are we,
Yeah.
like, kind of like, why is Igor even talking to everyone here about this?
Yeah, that's a good point, Kim. So really, the idea is that so with Igor, we talked about using Power over Ethernet to deploy edge intelligent devices, and so Power over Ethernet is low voltage in nature, and it's a true global standard. So it's safe and it's cost effective, and it's the best way to move data in real time and for two ways, right? And so we deploy things like these little nodes that are edge intelligent devices to power, control, and communicate with things like lights, shades, sensors, meters, door locks, you name it. If it's a DC object or even some AC objects, we can communicate with it. So in some of the example Brian was talking about, we utilize and we deploy light fixtures throughout these schools. So the idea is that if you go anywhere in an indoor building, there's a light already. And so that's the most obvious object to us to power and control and communicate with. Then once our edge devices are proliferated in that digital infrastructure, we can attach other cool things to it. So like in Brian's example, where he's talking about being able to do automated attendance or knowing little Johnny's in the wrong corridor, or so there, we deploy Bluetooth beacons attached to these devices as well. And those are then looking for Bluetooth objects in the space. And so all that is deployed on our nervous system that is called Nexus.
Thank you. Yes. So I think, it's certainly really cool, the type of smart technology out there. Are there any smart technology integrations? So you've mentioned automated attendance, for example. Are there any others that are out now or coming soon that you think are really taking the student and teacher experiences to the next level?
I'd have to say for the student teacher comfort, the movement of getting into big AI, IoT data collection software is a big means of that to create the comfort for them in their learning environments. I remember being a kid and sitting in school, and if classroom was too hot, too cold, or I was in, a lot of glare, it was hard to concentrate. But now that can be automated through the lighting system, but then also through the AI within the facility of that software to make those adjustments, and having that ability on a wearable that identifies people's personal preferences and those changes take place. That's just another means of creating that comfort and helping out those students.
Yeah, and so like once all that data is moving and being open and interoperable and available through things like RESTful APIs, the new applications that can be developed by all kinds of software partners can be deployed. some other things that I find exciting, and I'll even step it back into some real basics, are things just like tunable white and circadian rhythm lighting, as well as the control of natural light, which is shades and more. And so doing tunable white lighting is shown to both have a biological and a psychological effect on people. And so what does that mean is that if it's warmer color temperatures make you more comfortable and relaxed, great for reading books and even test taking, while as a more bright white colors about like vibrant activities in labs and trying to get people to wake up. And so our bodies respond to that. And that even those little things can make people happy as well as productive, right? And it's just not done at scale today. And it's not done at scale today because it's not been cost effective in the past. But now with sort of leveraging this digital infrastructure and moving this data around, we can do so cost effectively and then layer on all these other cool applications.
Yeah, that's a good point, Matt, with the tunable, because your Rev 6 node having that capability of doing tuning, and you go individual fixture control to do that, to have that tunable there is very easy to do, because now, as you know, the manufacturer is just doing that second channel for the tunable, and as opposed to the traditional, what's required to come in and do tunable is usually cost prohibitive.
Yeah, and so aren't you doing that like on like one of your projects now? And then like which rooms are they doing that in? Is it everywhere? Is it only certain rooms? What do you know what's going on there?
Yeah. So what they did is the building was really originally designed just as static white with dimming to 1%. But then they decided to come back and deploy the tunables into all learning environments, and then in the nurses area as well. So if a student's not feeling well, they can adjust it down to 3,500K, let them relax so they're not under a 4,000K fixture with a headache,
Yeah.
and allow them to rest. I won't be surprised if they look to deploy it if there's going to get any calming rooms, stuff of that nature. That would help out as well there.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody yesterday. We were talking about a particular school over in Georgia, and in the exceptional student areas, or they were the teachers were actually taking like blue lenses and putting them over the lights, and the facilities person for that particular site didn't even know why they were doing it, right? So if we could just build that inherently into these products, we can create a better experience for both the student and the teacher and the staff. And so I would say like the last 4 school projects I've worked on have all been tunable white lighting, at least to some extent across the project.
Mm-hmm.
And actually that, I think you've touched on a couple of things relating to, how this technology is a lot more affordable than it used to be. We all know the challenges that can come with the school budget. How do you sell the value of PoE, power over Ethernet, and IoT to schools, especially schools who may have a somewhat limited budget?
So for me, it's a conversation of CapEx and OpEx, because don't want to measure PoE directly with a lighting control system because of what it can do. So like the school I'm working on now, we found that just in maintenance alone, the head of facilities was consumed 40 hours a week maintaining drivers and ballasts. And that's the full scope of maintaining the driver and the ballast, not just going out in the field and changing it. So having that ability to have a system that can remotely troubleshoot, you can see what's happening live, receive messages. That PoE node is now your control device and your driver. The simplicity of the change out, not having to power down rooms and so forth. It was just a no-brainer at that point in time. In addition to your building set for the future, and it can grow with you.
Yeah, and to me, I think about I like to touch on hot button topics like inflationary pressures that we're seeing right now. I can't think of a product category that's not experienced a price increase, and at least multiple price increases here coming into Q2 of this year and beyond. And so if you look at the high cost of MC cable, copper, as coupled to Ethernet and low voltage, and then the type of talent that's capable of installing the systems, those weigh heavily into the total install cost of these systems. And so if if you're going down the traditional path right now and you're getting beat up on costs, now's the time to really think about, hey, maybe a digital maybe a PoE infrastructure is the way to go today. And then also I'm future proof going forward. So Brian mentioned, hey, it's a CapEx and an OpEx story. So everything I just talked about is CapEx, but on the OpEx side, like just doing a network system, at a minimum, you're going to get a 22% incremental savings over a traditional LED control system. And that's a minimum. Then if you have like an energy czar or someone that's compensated or incentivized to achieve incremental energy savings throughout the life of the building, they're going to start to dial in the HVAC and light levels and scenes and motion control and daylighting. And so we've seen it range from 20 to 80% savings as compared to other systems. So there's a huge energy savings benefit. And then Brian touched on the maintenance, right? So we eliminate those AC LED line voltage drivers. Those do last a while. They're going to last like 8 to 12 years. But they're converting AC to DC very inefficiently, and that creates a lot of heat, and that's what kills them. So with PoE, we're just converting DC to DC, so it's much more efficient and doesn't create as much heat. And those drivers or those nodes live 15 plus years. We've done testing to show that our nodes will live the same or better than the LED diodes themselves, which have like an 80,000 hour type life. So there's tons of benefits that we can talk with folks about.
Well, I'd love to learn. You've definitely both hit on short term, midterm, and now let's focus a little bit on long term. So, what do you expect to see in terms of outcomes for schools who have chosen to implement IoT solutions in their buildings, especially if they choose to really leverage the strength of the PoE backbone to connect all their IoT solutions together? So outcomes long term for those schools who are thinking proactively in this way.
I'm going to go with a more niche answer. Brian, I'm going to jump out in front of you this time. And so I like to talk about so I think about myself and I think about my son and other kids 18 and younger in the next generation. And so they need to be learning coding. They need to be learning automation. They need to know how to create action events and sequence of operations. And so once you build a digital infrastructure around a student, and if they're encouraged to learn code or to mess with IoT like MQTT integrations and APIs, that it's a living learning environment, right? And so those kids will thrive in that and then pursue further into IT-based careers, which we know where the opportunity is. Those are high-paying jobs. And so I want to encourage as many kids as possible to go chase their dreams as it relates to IoT. And that's how we can really make a difference, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there, Matt, knowing that AI, IoT jobs are going to be the fastest growing market for employment. But I also look at the building. And so if the owners have already deployed a PoE infrastructure, which is low voltage, this achievement to run net zero by 2050, the ability of them being able to come in and now get a renewable energy source put on top of that building, directly power that building throughout the day on that lighting system and keep them off that grid, give them energy storage devices on the side. So if there are events taking place at night, they're still off that grid. And the grid is there only for demands whenever they need to be there. And that's going to help achieve that net zero and set them for the future.
Yeah, the DC microgrid it's here today and it's ready, right? Like if I look at what we're doing and what's capable and where we are, so I've been doing I've been with Igor 3.5 years and I've seen immense change. So in the next 3.5 years, we'll see greater change. So today, if you look at the ceiling infrastructure, your lights, your ceiling fans, your exhaust fans, your cameras, all that stuff is DC low voltage, right? And so really all we have left is maybe some air conditioning, which, there are DC air conditioning systems in the works today. So I could see in the next 3 years, 100% of the ceiling plane is all DC, and all that could tap into that microgrid concept with batteries and photovoltaics. And so I think, you've you've built a resilient infrastructure, you've built a building to be off grid, you've built a building that can contribute back to the grid to help others and or to offset energy costs. So it's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, certainly, Matt, I think the recent events, everything from pipeline issues to extreme weather means we really need to think about energy resiliency, and DC microgrids are certainly one way to achieve that. That does kind of bring up something I hear a lot when we talk about IoT and especially the PoE infrastructure. It's this term called future proof. And what does that really mean? And maybe when we think about schools who implement this technology, if we say, they're getting a future proof solution, what does that actually mean to a school? Maybe Matt, do you want to kick that off? And then I'd love to get Brian's perspective on that, especially as like a specialist in the field.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll just throw a couple examples out there for future proofing. So the idea is once you put in place a power over Ethernet digital infrastructure, DC infrastructure, is that now you can do things like reconfigure a space. So if you said, hey, I'm not utilizing these, it's a 30-person classroom and I really need two 15-person rooms. Well, you can easily throw up a wall, split those two spaces without having to call in specialized labor to split those rooms. And now you do that. So you're more empowered to reconfigure spaces once it's future proofed. And then also now that nervous system is in place, and that's something I don't talk about enough, is that, the nervous system is how we control our digits and our thumbs and our fingers, and we feel heat. And so the idea there is that with that nervous system, you can just add an end user object. So maybe today indoor air quality is not a problem in a more rural environment, but it becomes more urban. IAQ monitoring makes sense. And so there we want to maybe add some sensors that are monitoring a particulate matter. If the nervous system is already there, you just tap into it, right? So it's so easy to add, replace, and evolve it. And so those are a couple examples I think of about future proofing and why it's necessary.
Yeah. So what I think of is just talking to clients is the ability of the PoE nodes, which do exactly what Matt's talking about, because who knows what the future holds for new devices coming out, right? And having the ability to have a USB input and RS-45 input, your low voltage inputs for any sensor that's running, 12 to 48 volts, and to bring those in and not have to worry about, okay, I have to go buy this particular hardware and repull this whole entire infrastructure over here to get this one component. Is it worth it to me? Where you can actually just attach it and you're in and you're up and running and you get to achieve your goals.
Yeah, my favorite example from Igor's perspective is really that 2 years ago, we didn't think that we would ever be really needing to work on UVC intelligent disinfection, and then a big market event happens, and there's new products that you can't dream of now that come out, and because it's a PoE infrastructure, the nodes connect so easily to any device, and then it's a software-based solution. It's just an update, and you can have these new features, and it's just adding that product that we don't even know will exist in the future. It can save a lot of time and keep those buildings from getting outdated, or allow them to adapt.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I hear you. Disinfection has definitely been a hot button topic and will continue to be important going forward as we think about how do we keep people safe and productive and healthy. So absolutely.
Yeah, that in addition to just the touchless walking through the building behaviors taking place, cell phones becoming everything, right? So people wearing badges and having key fobs and stuff like that, that's going to start going away. So utilizing that cell phone for your access control, but then also for a teacher to have the ability to use their cell phone as an access point device, but then also control their lighting within their facility and their learning environment, to even some temperature control, shades, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to take it a little bit. We've been talking really, future, and that's vision is, I think, it really incredible, and how you can prepare today to capture that vision. But when we think of even like your current projects, Brian, what will a typical day in the classroom look like once these smart building technologies are in this space? Maybe from that teacher student perspective of walking through from, let's kick off with automated attendance, and then what?
The teacher could open up their tablet or their cell phone from that point in time, set the room off of one single preset, one single app that could be used for your access control, to your room controls, to possibly even ordering food from the cafeteria and having that delivered into the classroom. It's just to think about what's going to be happening and what's going to come within these schools and what they could do. It's like it's hard to even imagine what it's going to be like in another 10 years in a learning environment.
Yeah, I think we'll take a number of schools now. The children are badging or fobbing as they get off the bus or they enter the school, so we at least know that they made it to school and what time they got there, and the parents and teachers or staff are notified. Well, then the next step would be to take it into the classroom for that automated attendance. And then as far as the teacher goes, maybe he or she has their preferences or their policies, right? So when their day starts, they like a warm color temperature at a certain level. And then if it's very possible, because everything is like Zoom or online learning now in a hybrid environment, to say, okay, from this time to time, or this, we're going to do reading. And so, but then we're going to do test taking, and then we're going to have a lab. And so the room can respond to those applications, right? And so the building kind of comes to life and customizes around that, to where you and I, the goal is to where we don't really notice it. It just happens around us, and we just feel good about it. And so that's what I think will happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool. Anyone who's had teachers or anyone in children in schools, you just love the idea of, instead of that harsh fluorescent lighting that maybe some of us experienced, or, the glare of the sun when you're trying to watch something on a screen, just having a building that can really adapt to optimize your learning environment so you don't have that as a distraction. Just seems like a wonderful thing. In addition to all the CapEx and OpEx savings the school district can enjoy. We're nearing the end, so I want to give both of you one last chance to just leave our audience and whoever watches this with any parting thoughts or things that you'd like to leave when they consider either the future of smart schools or IoT in this space.
Yeah, so I like to think about, if you are thinking about building a school now, or if you already are engaged with your architect or even your engineering team, it's not too late to look at digital infrastructures for your buildings. It's not terribly complicated. There's not a lot of barriers anymore, other than it's just, I've not done this before, is a lot of what the answers you'll hear. So there's lots of resources out there. Brian and his team are a great resource to reach out to, because they can walk you through the process from how to design it all the way through deploying it and maintaining those systems. We have multiple partners across the US and across the world that have done this from A to Z. So both in our partners as well as here at Igor, it's okay to reach out and say, I want to do this. What do I do? And we can help you get there.
Yeah, the critical part of it, as well as building out the smart school, is if there's any design team on here or anything like that, or even owners, is the specification, and sitting down and understanding what you want to get out of your building initially, so that can be written into your Division 25, where it talks about the integration requirements and behaviors of the buildings, what's to be expected whenever events take place, and so forth. And don't be afraid to do it. It's very easy to do. I was in the line voltage world, lighting and controls, for quite some time. Honestly, designing out a POE building is much simpler. And you can move a lot quicker through the building in your design phase. So yeah, go ahead and take the leap and go for it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both for joining us today. That's it. We will follow up with an email so you can watch the recording again. We also have a teacher talking about her experience in the classroom that we'll share with you. That is fabulous. And we'll also include both of our speakers' emails. So if you have any questions for your next smart building, you can reach out directly and we would be happy to help in any way we can. So thank you all, and I hope you have a great day.
Yeah, thanks guys. Appreciate it. Appreciate being here. Brian, thanks for jumping on.
Absolutely. Appreciate the invite. You guys take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.